Good morning, everybody. It's Saturday, February 23rd, 2026. I'm at the Poduty Live Podcast Theater at Harrison's on Corbett in downtown Tarentum for another episode of Poduty in the News. We're bringing the crew Saturday morning, so everybody get their coffee ready. I've got Eric Holden joining me from the Goblin's Corner. Eric, do you know what time it is?
It's time for an amazing intro song.
What time is it?
I love that you made me dance in the intro, Jeff. That's about as much dancing as you'll see this white boy do, so thank you for that.
I love it. People are very amused by the theme song and really enjoy it. Well, Eric, welcome to the show. Welcome to Poduty in the News. This is the only live news podcast about podcasting from the stage. I'm your host, Jeff Revilla. Eric Holden from the Goblin's Corner is joining us. Eric, officially, after all my blunders, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm pleased to be here from not so sunny Atlanta currently. So as you can see my delightful studio in the back. Hug a flumph, if you know what those are.
I do not. What are those?
Flumps? This actually, my wife crocheted this for me, but it's flumps are, they're like psionic floating mushrooms, essentially, that gently fart as they fly through the air. It's the most ridiculous monster in Dungeons and Dragons, which is why I have one as a squeezable toy. So
the farting, does it, when you squeeze it, does it make a noise?
No, it doesn't, but that's definitely something we should put into it, like a little, like a dog squeezy.
I think those would go viral if people had farting mushrooms that they could just play.
It kind of looks like the flying spaghetti monster, really.
Yeah. Well, Eric, tell us a little bit about the Goblin's Corner. I want to hear about some of your experience running your own podcast. You mentioned some of the improv experience. Now, I think those things really tie in to what we're trying to accomplish today, which is talking about live events, live podcasting, storytelling. And tell us a little bit about the show and a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I come from over 20 years of improv experience. I did a lot of, on-stage improv, some comedian stuff. And I taught improv over the years. But I'm also a huge nerd, as you can see from the background, various books and media. And when COVID happened several years ago, I was left with nothing to do because we didn't have live events. No one wanted to meet up in person. And my best friend, Matt Staples, who's my co-host for my show, we would sit out on the back porch years and years ago and talk about just gaming and storytelling and what kind of thing we're running and stuff like that. And at one point we were like, hey, why don't we just do a show for this? Because we would post in Discord or on Reddit about people who would, hey, I have a hard time telling this story, or I don't understand, maybe not necessarily the mechanics of the rules, but how to get players involved, or I've got a problem player, how can we make this an additive, engaging experience? And so the Goblin's Corner was born from that, is how do you get people using the experience that you have in improv and world building and storytelling to make fun stories? Because that's really what it's about. That's why people play tabletop games. It's not just because of the rules or because I've got this really cool character build, because they want to tell stories. It's the same feeling that you get when you're a kid and you're playing make-believe just with some dice rolls. So we've been doing that for several years now. We've got an amazing set of followers. We've been doing, we do some live events as well. We stream some of the stuff. We've done a rando roundtable occasionally where we get people from the industry in to just kind of wax philosophical about events and sometimes just, talk smack, which is always fun. And that's pretty much our show, right? Like, do you want to make a great story? Great. Do you want to know how to make a stupid monster? We've got plenty of those. We'll show you how to make them too. So check us out.
Yeah, it's great. You have the live stream experience, the improv experience. It's the Goblin's Corner, the podcast. Check it out. I'm sure available everywhere. Do you have a dedicated website that you like to send people to?
Goblinscorner.com. And of course, we're on YouTube and all iTunes and all the other stuff as well.
Awesome. I'll put all those links in the show notes. And as you know, anybody who becomes on the show is part of the crew. And on the Poduty in the News website, you'll see all of Eric's links, his bio, and all the episodes that Eric will be on today. And then any episode in the future we'll add to that profile. So you can check Eric out, check out the show notes for the links on his episode, and check out the crew page to see everybody who's ever been on Poduty in the News. Eric, are you ready for our first story?
Let's dive in.
I'm trying something different. I've noticed that the weakest part of the show is me reading about a minute-long version of these news stories. It's not that exciting in hindsight when I read for about 60 minutes and I stumble over all of my words. So I thought, I'm going to start telling my guests about the stories instead of reading verbatim from a script. So we're going to try that out today. We're going to see how that goes. I think we'll be okay. I don't know, but that's why we edit these things, and I can always insert me reading later on.
We'll improvise it. It's fine.
Yeah, that's the way we'll do it.
In post.
As long as I don't tell you I'm messing up, you'll never know. So this is a podcast called the Yogscast. It's on a YouTube channel, and they went live. They had about 11,000 viewers on YouTube, and they broke down Star Trek Insurrection. It was the energy of this live audience. It ended up turning what could have been just a niche nerd rant into an entertaining communal experience shared around fandom and frustration, right? Star Trek Insurrection has pros and cons. It has its critics. It has its fans. But they were able to take their community, tie in together with what this one Star Trek Insurrection was all about, and see what other people thought about, see what the reactions were from the fans. And it was just a great way to bring fans together around a central topic. What were some of your takeaways, Eric?
So I watched it. What I liked a lot about it is it makes podcasting kind of a mainstream media form now. And it's a great way to, just as an independent, group of creatives, or a theater in your case, or even just a show in ours, to get out more to the mainstream. Like, one of the things I thought that was really interesting as they were breaking stuff down is it's adding that unexpectedness to, what it was essentially a scripted event, right? I'm sure they had notes as they were breaking stuff down, but instead they were doing live. They were getting, catches and takes from people who were commenting during the show, which was kind of cool. And it made it kind of a more fun and engaging experience. And you get really awesome creations from that, right? There were some side jokes that they were establishing while they were chatting. It was a long and lengthy episode, but they made it really interesting.
Yeah, it's events like this, live streams like this, that really bring the fans together who really care. So whatever your industry is, whatever you're talking about on your podcast, there are those little nooks and crannies in your industry. There's those hidden topics. There's those not so mainstream things that people can get together around and just geek out over, nerd out over those little details, and just have a good time. And things like that, when you get that niche, really brings the community together, really brings out the super fans. I think that's something we saw for this stream, is the super fans came out who knew all the ins and outs of Star Trek Insurrection.
And nerds are opinionated too. And you could give like they did a lot of, they did some good takes. You could see where they were like glazing certain people. And then they did some bad takes, and you could just see the engagement spike, which I have opinions about, because one of the things that, we do is we don't try to trash other people's love just because I might not be interested in this particular game or this version. I make fun of 4th edition D&D, for example, in my show, but it's not because I don't like it. It's not my bag, right? But you might have been brought up playing that edition of gaming, and that might be something that, got you through a hard time. Who am I to say that that's something bad? Now, in their case, they did it in a way that uses humor, so it's not, kind of a malevolent way. But it's just enough to kind of, get that ire from the nerds who are very opinionated, and they drove that engagement. They did it in a fun way. People laughed about it, and it gave that energy to the show as well, which I really enjoyed. There's one thing I wanted to mention on what you said about niches. That is a great example. They're not following the same script, particularly on YouTube. YouTube script is, I've got, 10 to 15 minutes. I've got to nail these points. I've got to make it so that it can be chopped up into clips. This was like an hour, 2 hours long. And it was a live format. They were, they were going back and forth. There were pauses in there. They didn't care. They found their niche. They did something that was unique. And as a result, they attracted people to that show. And that says a lot. You don't have to be like everybody else. Yes, I don't care about analytics. The analytics may say do this, but if you do something that's real, that's what's important.
Love keeping it real. And I like something else that you said about you don't have to tear down other people's loves and passions, but celebrating them in a way. And, friends do joke around. They'll tease each other a little bit. And you can have fun with each other's likes and passions, but they're also celebrating them at the same time. They're not tearing people down, or at least that's one of the ways that you approach it. You're looking to elevate and celebrate. And it might not be something that you love about a series or a particular storyline, but you know that your fans do, and there's reasons why. So you want to hear those storylines, why they love it, why are they passionate about it, and you can lift up that storyline. You can celebrate it there with them. You can joke around, back and forth a little bit. But, being there with each other on a subject matter that you're both passionate about, it's the best way to glue that community together.
Absolutely. And by the way, that doesn't mean I'm not going to make fun of it.
Yeah.
It just means that it's going to be an additive experience instead of a subtractive.
Yeah, and speaking of bringing people together for a cause, how about trying to save Great Salt Lake? This happened live at Sundance. It was hosted at the Impact Lounge, and they asked one simple question: can storytelling actually help save the Great Salt Lake? And what they did is they brought up activists, they brought up podcasters, they were sharing the stage, and Masay Gonzalez podcast Stay Salty, lake-facing stories, passed the mic around, and through the end of the episode, through the end of the show, the governor, Spencer Cox, recommitted to filling the lake by 2034. And the big idea here is, how does live storytelling, how do these live events where you're bringing the community together, how do they help create that civic influence? How do you build something greater than just what you're talking about on the stage? How do you create action?
That is a great example of getting the word out. We have a lot of heavily edited media these days. And one of the things that I love about just the time we live in now is if I've got an opinion, I can get online and say it, and it can get out to a million different places. And I don't care how much it's, regulated or whatever. If I have an opinion, someone's going to see it. And that's great for people trying, in this case, like trying to save the lake, right? And, politicians are starting to pay attention to that, which is awesome. It also shows that live emotion. Like people are, they were angry, they were passionate, they were concerned, and they had experts on there telling them their points, right? And there was back and forth, and that resonates a lot with people.
I'm amazed, like just seeing the community come back out again. We always talk about that post-COVID hangover where people kind of retracted to their homes and they're just doom scrolling on their phones all night. But here's something that people were passionate about. People came out in droves to listen to these stories, to hear what can be done. The politicians are paying attention. This is where the direction of media is going. The ability for you to create something that other people listen to that isn't one of the three main networks. You have power now. And these types of events where you're bringing your podcast, you're bringing the community, you're bringing the politician together, that's going to move the needle a lot faster than calling into your senator or penning a letter. I don't know if people still pen letters, but penning a letter to your congressman. This method is the media. This is how you distribute information. You record that episode, you put it on social media, you distribute it through your podcast feed, and now you have something to spread awareness, to show people, hey, we better save this lake or we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, you've got a voice, which is very important. Now, I will say, like, this could have easily been a double-edged sword. Like, it could have quickly, and I've seen plenty of videos where, like, a town hall that was streamed live just kind of goes into this polarization moment where it's us against them and people are fighting. And next thing you know, there's anarchy going on inside the courthouse or wherever it was. But I think they did it in a way where they found commonalities. And that takeaway, I think, if you're doing this for a live event, if you're a podcaster, if you're anybody trying to do some kind of live event, and you've got two groups of people that may not see eye to eye, take an improv rule, find like, find things you can build on, and then, elevate that. You both like cheese? Awesome. Let's start with cheese, right? You both like, I don't know, rap music or the fact that you like money. Okay, cool. I like money too, right? Go to with Idiocracy there. But there's something that everybody can find in common. You find that common ground, because if you don't, you're going to get that polarized thing, and then you're just going to be battling each other. And that's no fun. Nobody wants to see anybody argue on a stage. Nobody wants to see anybody argue live, We get enough arguments in our daily life, and you want to see people come together and build.
Yeah, and that's a sign also of a well-moderated event. They really tried to avoid that us versus them language. They wanted to talk about, here's where we're at, here's where the problems are, here's where some of the solutions, and they focused on an outcome. And They were able by the end to get that commitment from the governor. Less than 8 years away, can we get this thing filled back up? And it's just a great way to see the community come together and get some action on the table. Let's go. Speaking of action on the table, I love this story. This one is, I wish I was in Fargo, Fargo-Moorhead Community Theater. They're building a $10 million, 40,000 square foot theater. It's a 420-seat theater, and it's going to have the most important thing, besides the modern acoustics, flexible classrooms, rehearsal space, it's going to have voice lessons rooms and dedicated podcast space.
Wow.
That's a big deal. So they're building this theater, and they're already incorporating what's the future going to be like that's going to fill this theater. So they have rooms to develop the talent. They're thinking ahead. How do we get people comfortable on stage, on microphones? And when you start recording your own episode in spaces like this, and you're ready to go to that next level, the next level is already there. There's a theater space for you to come in. Maybe there's special nights where tenants or students who are taking classes in the voice lesson room, the podcast studio, maybe there's like a recital night, where they can come in, they can bring their family in, and they can get a taste of performing on stage. I just thought this was a great way to build podcasting into the foundation of this theater and get something moving, get the arts flowing, get those ideas put out there, recorded and distributed. And it starts right in the back rooms of this 420-seat theater.
Jeff, they're taking your idea, man. This is a great way to put stuff together. You know what this means, though? It really means that this is another form of just, creative media. Like we've gone out of our infancy of, hello, I have a show on this, and I'm going to interview this guy about his business and what it means about B2B marketing. And instead, it's, here are my ideas. Let's build something creatively. This also adds a lot of unexpectedness because, as you're aware, a live audience can change things up, and it lets you kind of become more creative overall too, which I love. Man, that's a huge theater as well. So you could even have stuff like a podcast moderating a live event and have people on stage and have an MC be part of someone who's streaming in. It also means maybe I can't get that guest in because they live in a different country. Now it opens up the world to guests from different places, people who are live and local, and it's a really cool way to connect people.
Let's combine our last story with Saving Great Salt Lake with this theater space. Now you can have those types of community events, a podcast being moderated by a panel of 4. That's a great way. Some of those panelists could be some of the students taking voice lessons, some of the podcasters using the podcast space in the back rooms. And now you have this event that you're putting together. It's a social event. Your guest, like you mentioned, could be anywhere in the world.
It's also, I think, an excellent business idea as a theater. Just like hearing about like a lot of the business decisions, like modern theaters, I know this is going to probably come to a surprise, don't make a lot of money, right? It's
no surprise to me.
Yeah. In fact, most theaters make more money off of like liquor sales than anything else, than any show stuff. And so, having people who are trained in audio work or podcasting, or even just, taking improv classes or acting classes or whatnot, those type of things can help generate revenue to the theater. They can sponsor more programs so that they can, sustain the theater for years to come. And that way you don't have to have like a patron that gives you money and then you're kind of beholden to whatever, they want you to tell. You want an independent theater to tell its own story, not be beholden to some, billionaire that, wants you to basically use it for their own soapbox. And so I think any way that they can, make revenue, and also, again, train people in a creative craft is an excellent business idea.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, like, if a theater doesn't have a production that night, the theater isn't making any money that night. The doors are closed, the lights are off, but they still have their bills to pay. And that's something I know with, even though my theater is only 40 seats, I have maybe 2-3 events a week, 4 nights a week. This theater's just burning cash. But what I love about their business model, there's these office rooms, office spaces, rehearsal rooms, podcast studios. They're building in these other little streams of income that can help support the theater during those down nights.
Yeah, it's versatile.
We'll keep going. We'll go back to history. This story is about Will Rogers at the Will Rogers Memorial Museum. This happened on February 12th, and they did a story of bringing Will Rogers to life. And for those of you who aren't fully familiar or weren't in attendance, he's part of the Cherokee Nation, born in 1879. He was the highest paid Hollywood star of his time. Also a political humorist. He was a national influence. But we're seeing more and more of these types of history events as podcasts performing live for audiences. And the audiences are coming out in droves. And in this case, they had free admission and refreshment. So, lure people in with food and drinks, and then tell some stories, tell that history, and share that legacy with people and bring it to life in a way that you wouldn't get just reading a book or listening to maybe a documentary that was produced before. And I just love when museums and podcasts come together. We've seen this model a few times, and this is just another example where it's just that powerful connection of this is what we are, we're a museum, this is what we talk about, and this is what people like listening to. Let's bring all that together and have a night out.
Yeah, and it's a nice sense of immersion and depth, much like this delightful spa ad that's on your screenshot as well.
I'm being targeted with my ads.
Absolutely. It was like, oh man, you need to get a big immersive spa. They use humor and storytelling. They use facts and then weird quirks to kind of engage the audience. It's not like just a history lesson. I guarantee, while I didn't see, anything in there because it was just a story that you posted, but this opens people up a little bit more to learning, and it takes that absurdity of life and probably the really interesting facts about the guy's life and distills it a bit, gives you something that you would then want to go, oh, here's some tidbits. We always say, leave the audience wanting more in improv, right? So you always end it on a high note. And I guarantee if they set this up right and they had the right audience and stuff, they would give them just enough to intrigue others so that they would go out and explore more information on their own. And that's the way you do historical, shows. I kind of really enjoy historical podcasts or podcasts that give information and stuff. I'll shout out to, Stuff You Should Know, which is Georgia podcast. And they always go into really interesting tidbits or history behind, whatever it is, behind, I don't know, the armadillo or just random, interesting facts and stuff. And it makes you want to go, oh, cool, I want to find out more about this. That's how you draw people in.
The thing I love about these types of podcasts at museums is, maybe they have a little bit of an agenda set. They have they outline what they want the show to talk about, but they have all the artifacts of Will Rogers laying around, and they have a back room, things that aren't on display. They could bring stuff out and share things that the public can't see, and they're sharing those unique artifacts, the history, and they actually have maybe the jacket or the hat or something that he wore on a movie set, and they have that here, and they can bring it out, and people can see it, something they haven't seen maybe in 70 years when they first saw it on the screen. Now that's the actual thing. And having an event like that in the museum, you can get so much more immersive in your storytelling.
And it doesn't have to be this giant, expensive event where they list, they see the setup and they've got the pop-up posters and the live, static recreation of the statues and all that stuff. And they're like, this is Will Rogers' gun. Well, that's cool. But, instead they could just be like, you want to see his gun? Check it out. Look at this thing. Great. Here's his shot glass that is right next to his gun. He used to take 5 shots of whiskey before he made a show. I don't know anything about the guy, so I don't know if that's actually true or not. But if I was doing cowboy movies, I would definitely be drinking a lot of whiskey on set. So, but it gives that realism to stuff, and you don't have to make a giant, like a big set or a huge event, because maybe you don't have the money to do that, or maybe you just want to do something quick and you can round up. You've got too many artifacts from a particular individual or a particular setting, and so you can't get everything into your exhibit. And so that stuff in the back room, you just break out. Here's some tidbits. You want to learn a little bit more? Come to the museum and you can learn a lot more.
Yeah, you're filming all those cowboy movies in the desert. You got to take shots to stay hydrated. Also taking shots, photography shots at the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. They recorded live at the Build Expo, and they were breaking down the latest camera releases like Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fujifilm. And then they closed with an audience Q&A. It's an example of how a niche podcast can turn a trade show appearance into live content that extends beyond the room. And we talk about podcasts like this all the time, going to where their audience already is, performing their show in rooms where the people who love what they do already exist. So they brought their podcast, the PetaPixel, and they brought it to a conference. That conference gave you that multiplying effect. You know, people know what you do. They probably are already fans, so those people are going to show up. But other people in the room who are at that conference, now they're getting introduced to you. Now they can hear your thoughts and figure out why are all these other people interested in the show. And I just love the idea of taking your show to where your audience already exists.
Oh, absolutely. There are already experts, sitting in the audience. There are already people passionate about the subject. And I'll veer real quick. Like, I do an improv show at Dragon Con every year. It's a Star Trek-based improv show called Captain's Log. Guess what? The audience of 800 people is full of Star Trek nerds who love Star Trek. And when I do Star Trek, an improvised Star Trek set on stage, they love everything. Because even if I'm wrong, which I frequently am, it's because the community understands, they get the in-jokes. Same thing with what PetaPixel did, right? You've got a bunch of designers and photographers. They're passionate about photography. They get up there. You want to see the coolest new camera? Look what it does, or this imports into, I don't know, Photoshop or Affinity or whatever, design program you happen to be using, or it has all of these settings. They talk about stuff with the experts. And then the people in the audience, they get it. They can get the technical jargon because they already are invested and involved in that creative film. Go where your audience is. That's a great idea. You're going to get a very engaged, happy audience. Well, not necessarily happy. They might be pissed off about it too, but at least you're going to get some certain opinions about that subject matter, which means you better be on point with your knowledge as well too. So that makes you a better presenter because you have to answer questions that maybe hit you from left field.
Yeah, you got to put the Canon people on the right side, the Nikon people on the left side. Don't let them mix because they really stick to the camera that they love.
Yes, lens manufacturers are just dead in the center trying to no, guys, we can sell it to everybody.
We like you, but we like everybody. But some people don't like everybody, and that's what happens on the worst hookup ever. Sometimes two people meet and they don't get along, and this is probably adult content, so don't go clicking the link if you have kids in the car. But this is from the Downside podcast, and they did this live audience segment called Worst Hookup Ever. It's kind of like a game show, and it had live audience participation. They weren't allowing anything illegal, but that doesn't mean that the content is PG rated. And they let the crowd vote by applause, and they gave away prizes at the end, T-shirts and stuff. And I just love the way, I love structured chaos. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I grew up with punk rock and skateboarding, so chaos is something that I love to thrive in. So to see a podcast really go off the rails, really try this type of format live on a stage, letting the audience come up and be the show, that's a big risk, but you can really thrive in that type of chaos if you really embrace it.
Oh, 100%. Hail Eris, man. Chaos is king. I will say a couple of takeaways from this. A, failure is always funny. If you're going to crash the plane, crash it into the mountain and crash it hard. Like, if you're going to fail deep. People love to see that stuff. And it's hilarious when it goes sideways. Sometimes that's part of the magic. And again, this is also a double-edged sword. When sometimes things go bad, they're going to go bad in a really bad way. And the audience is going to be like, oh, man, this is really a bad feeling. And that's when, someone who's skilled in stuff like this needs to make sure that you steer that ship, right? Have an MC prepared to take it into either a positive direction or a funnier direction, or I don't know, just press that button, make it go even worse because you'll kind of kind of thread the needle and go through that awfulness into something hilarious. And that's where true comedy lies.
Yeah, I love it. Eric, I'm so grateful for you joining me today on Poduty News. Your improv experience, your storytelling, this made the show exponentially better today. Thank you. These are the type of characteristics I'm looking for in a guest, and you delivered at 1,000%. And so everybody who listened to these 6 stories, go back. There are so many good nuggets about applying improv to your performances, about getting up live on stage. And the way I wrap the show up, Eric, is I like to turn it over one last time to you. You can plug, promote, talk about anything you'd like. The floor is yours.
Oh, man, you shouldn't have said that. No, I will say this. If anybody's interested in making a better podcast, check us out. We wax philosophical about a lot of stuff, but I will also say, take some improv classes, take some acting classes, take a public speaking class, take something that allows you to present in a way that you can structure how you talk to your guest, right? Know who your audience is, and that will make you a better presenter and a better podcaster and a better person overall. And then if you're interested in how to tell a story, how to game with your players, or just how to have fun, check out the Goblin's Corner. We're on every single thing known to man. We even have social media, which I don't check, but my co-host Matt does. So you feel free to say hi to him. And yeah, that's it. Go play some games, have some fun, be a kid again.
That's the best part. I mean, especially this resurgence, obviously, in the last 5-10 years of D&D and the storytelling that has really gone skyrocketed. But hearing adults now getting back into things that they loved as a child has been like the most rewarding part of hearing about all that growth and all that interest in D&D again, is people are reliving their childhood through these gaming experiences, through these storytelling experiences. And it's so much fun to live full again, live a life you lived as a kid, but as an adult.
Yes, life is not just your soul-crushing job. Life is more than that. Get out, touch grass, enjoy the world.
Oh, that's funny. Touch grass isn't that I think that is like a corporate term.
I probably is. I'm sorry. I come from corporate America. Oh my God, they're killing me already. What?
They've infiltrated you.
My soul has already been crushed.
If your soul hasn't been crushed and you want to perform like you're a child again, we have a theater space here outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We do no contracts, no minimum ticket sales. We'll build you a landing page, sell the tickets for you, produce the show, record the show, give you back the recording. We take no ownership over the recording. At the end of the night, I sit down with you, I show you the dashboard, and we split the door 50-50. Everybody who has ever done a show on this stage has walked out of here profitable on their first show. Check it out at Poduty.com, Poduty.com. This has been Poduty in the News. Eric Holden, the Goblin's Corner. Eric, do you remember what time it was?
It was time for coffee, but now it's time for...
What time is it? What time is it? It's time for Poduty and the News. Poduty and the News. The only live news podcast about podcasting from the stage. Poduty and the News. Poduty and the News. The only live news podcast about podcasting from the stage.
Oh, the only live news podcast about podcasting from the stage.